G'day and welcome to the Farm's Advice podcast with your host, Jack Creswell. Whether you farm it, service it, or just love it, this podcast is for you. We'll bring you the techniques and technologies you can implement into your day straight from the leaders and innovators themselves. Spread the Farm's Advice so that we can reach more farmers right across Australia. Follow us on all of your socials at Farm's Advice and let's get into this episode. Welcome back to the Farm's Advice podcast. I've set myself a little bit of a challenge to start the podcast in a different way than just g'day. So, welcome back to the Farm's Advice podcast. This time we'll be connecting a bit with my community with Sandra Ireson. I actually met Sandra in the Red Meat Ambassador program, and I thought it'd be pretty good to get those that I met from the program to get them to come on board and tell me a little bit about their experiences, but also how their idea has been shaped and formed into growing the red meat sector. Great program. Check it out. Run by MLA and the team there. So have a look for the next cohort. But yeah, let's get into this episode, see what Sandra's all about. Sandra, welcome to the Farm's Advice podcast. Great to have you on the show, but also great to reconnect after our Red Meat Ambassador program.
Great. Thanks, Jack. Thanks for having me. And yeah, great to meet you at our Red Meat program too. And love listening to your Farm's Advice podcast. It's great.
Yes, I've always been keen to sort of prop up the red meat industry, and specifically for us, we're sheep producers. So that as well, and see how we can get out there a little bit more as well. So it was great to meet like a couple of other keen people within the industry. So we met there, Sandra, and that probably tells a few people about your background in red meat. But do you want to elaborate on that and tell us a bit about your connection to agriculture and what your background is?
Sure. Thanks, Jack. So I grew up in the Snowy Mountains on the Monero near Cooma on a family farm there. I'm actually now the sixth generation. Yeah. So got it in my blood, and then married, went to uni, studied agriculture. Wasn't many girls studying it back in those days. It's probably about 30 odd years ago, giving away my age. And then I ended up working for CSL, which did veterinary vaccines for a couple of years, and then moved out to the Hay District where I met my husband, and we then now are on a beef and sheep cattle property with some irrigation on the Lower Lachlan River north of Hay, on the saltbush plains out here. So that's sort of my connection with agriculture. So have sort of either worked or been on a farm all my life. And yeah, we have 3 adult children here now too, as well as, our cattle and sheep.
Beautiful. And I sort of know the answer, but which way do you sort of tend towards irrigation, cropping, and or the livestock?
So our irrigation is very just for pastures. We haven't had a lot of allocation over the last sort of 20 years. So the cattle, livestock. I grew up on a merino sheep property, but I tell you what, I kind of love cattle better than sheep now. Actually, I'm not a fan of sheep, which I probably should be. But beef cattle all the way.
You're on the wrong podcast then, but no, we won't hold you to that. For your farming operation, what you've got there at home, what does that look like for you?
Okay, so it's my husband and I working here full time. I do a few little sideline gigs as well with Hay program, and I have done for tourism and economic development and events and things like that over the years too. So that's been great. So yeah, as I said, we have 3 adult children. They are all either studying ag or working, have studied ag and working in the industry. They're not at home on the farm as yet. Succession planning is definitely something we're going to be looking into very shortly, and how we can make that a smooth process. So that's sort of us out here, on the Hay Plains, but it's all going pretty well.
Beautiful. And you mentioned the haying. Tell us a little bit about this, because it's what we were talking about at the Red Meat program, about what you're doing and how training up is vital for our regional and rural communities. What is it?
Yeah, so Hay Inc. is a rural education program that we started 9 years ago. It was a group of us in Hay that realised that there was a big loss of young people into the district, when I moved into the Hay district and had my first child, I turned around one day and realised that 12 of my friends who had had children at the same time had left the district. So we had a big gap in age group as well. So that 18 and plus 8 to 25 were missing. And then a lot of the buy-ups of national parks and water buy-ups had changed the demographic of landowners in the district too. So the big stations that had, 5, 6, 7, 10 jackaroos, jillaroos, had all changed their management styles, and that pulled a lot of young people out of the community. But it also changed the way that young people got a pathway into the industry as well. So their way to learn new skills, to see if they like the job, and connect with other young people in the industry and mentors through the program of working on big stations. So we got together and we set up a not-for-profit called Hay Incorporated. And from that, we were lucky to get some startup funding from Australian Wool Innovation, who have supported us as our key partner right through for the 9 years we've been going. And we train, 15 young people, 18 to 25 years. We do a 15-day program, 3-week blocks, so 1 week in Feb, 1 week in March, 1 week in June, to fit in with the calendar of livestock operations. And our training is delivered by some industry professionals, retired farmers. We also use Tokau Ag College for some of our workplace health and safety training, quad bikes and things like that. So it's a great way to connect young people that may never have had experience on a farm before, come from the city, that may have a little bit of interest, but for them to try it out and see if it's something they want to do. But we've also developed the program a lot to pass on skills to young people that are already working in the industry, and hone their skills and their networks and get some mentoring for them as well. So we have an alumni now of 130 young people that we keep connected through a closed Facebook page, and it's great because we keep in touch with them and pass on opportunities and information to them. And we've had 2 alumni networking events where they've come back to Hay and got back together again, which has been really good too. So, and I was fortunate with that program to received the AgriFutures Rural Women's Award in 2017 to roll it out into a document to so other communities could take up and do a similar program, and that's called Engage Ag. And there's a group up in Queensland at Emerald doing similar now, and some in South Australia too. So it's great to see that there are other communities doing a similar program, and the National Farmers sort of Career Ag starters sort of followed the model that we sort of started 9 years ago too.
Yeah, fantastic. And probably it's great to have like templates. I try, even for our own farm, but for others, set up structures and processes and create a template that can be manipulated to every sort of scenario, whatever sort of farm background you're coming from, as well as that. But like that connection, I went to TAFE Western here and I just did Cert 3, I think, in my gap year, just to I don't know, do something throughout my gap year. But like that connection, surprisingly enough, like that TAFE group is pretty well connected, and we're dispersed right across New South Wales and even Oz now. And we're all doing different things, but all still within ag as well. I think that's probably the best bit of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the people connection is what's so important with it, and that's our point of difference with we design the training program of what we think and what we know from landholders and employers, what they want their young people to learn. But it's that networking and young people getting together, and especially if you're straight out of school and you sort of want to find your people that you want to hang out with, it's a great way to connect. And we've got young people right across Australia doing our program that have done our program too. It's a similar sort of thing. And I think those connections that you can make early on in your career can, help you for the rest of your life.
Yeah, and that connection probably helps a lot with retention and keeping people in ag. If you didn't have those going through the same struggles, challenges, and even successes, you wouldn't really want to stick around, would you? So it's probably better to hold someone's hand along the same sort of journey, whether it be that 15-day or even that year-long course sort of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And because the structures sort of changed, there used to be, and I guess they still have this up in the north, big stations with a lot of young people working on them. But all my children have worked up on stations in territorial Queensland. So It like down here when that structure changed, you sort of might be one or two people just out on a station, long way, 100 k's from town, and social media has helped now with that connection, and then they can catch up on weekends. Otherwise, yeah, it can be pretty isolating, pretty lonely, and somewhere you probably don't want to hang out for a long time. So that retention of keeping them in the community and on their farms is really important.
Certainly. And what sort of outcomes are they? Measurable outcomes that you've received, or is it getting people in jobs in regional Australia? What is it?
Well, it's we keep in touch. So I keep in touch with them quite well, so we know who's still working in ag or who's living in a rural industry. Some may have done the week training, the program, and then said, well, actually ag's probably not for me, but they are still living in or working in a rural regional town. But I'd say probably about 85% are working in agriculture as well. So and moving up through their careers, some maybe still studying, and that will be part of a university degree or some other form of study, as you said, Cert 2, 3, 4. So yeah, the retention is actually really good. So it's great to see that that they're staying in ag, and it's a career they want to be in.
Yeah, absolutely. But also for those that didn't, that 15% or so, they've actually got an understanding of this as well. And we spoke about a red meat program about that sort of outside variant, like having someone that knows about the red meat industry or someone about the ag industry. Yet that person is actually that person that others can rely on if they don't know anyone, if you know what I mean.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. They at least they've got that understanding of first where their food comes from, and yeah, they may they've had that 1 year maybe working jackarooing or jillarooing in the hay district, and then gone on and done something else, but they've had that understanding to take that with them throughout their lives. And I guess for me, my passion and where I came from to start up this program was that back in 2011, 2012, when the live export ban happened in the Northern Territory, I had family members up there as well. But we noticed, that I turned around and realised that young people aren't understanding where their food comes from, how it's produced. And that's something that really needed to change. And I think with that live export ban really made us as an industry turn around and go, we need to educate people where their food comes from. And I was actually doing a inaugural e-leaders program with the National Rural Women's Coalition at that time, and it was an online learning program, which was fantastic for me living in an isolated place. And in 2012, the internet wasn't too bad then too. So I got 25 young people from a boarding school in Sydney, young boys, to come and have a week experience in the Hay District. And I said to them when they turned up, "Oh, so you're really keen to?" Because it was Year of the Farmers, and it was. I said, "Are you keen to do ag and learn about farms?" And they just went, "Nah, no." Mum said we had to. Mum, Dad said we had to come and do it. It was when the Year 10 school certificate changed, and they had to. They had sort of an extra week there, so they absolutely loved it. We did everything from them going to the one teacher school to, having chocolate cake down by the river to, being in a shearing shed, seeing cropping, irrigation, the whole works in that 1 week. It was 45 degrees, and I did have a few parents ringing up because they made the national news about what the weather was like. But it was so well received, and that's how we sort of started haying from that happening in our hay community, and then a few of us got talking, and that's how we set that up. But a lot of those young people probably didn't go into ag, but they could be, your next politician or your next, someone making big decisions of what happens in rural and regional Australia, and that little bit of learning that they got then can go a long way. And understanding where their food comes from is so important.
Yeah, exactly. And I think within agriculture, everything seems to be such a long burn. And our thinking, our approach is long term as well when we're dealing with the environment and everything and looking at 5 year average. 5 years is quite a long time in normal sort of business operations, retail as such. But as farmers, we're just sort of adjusted quite well to that long term thinking and having people getting it installed in with them. That red meat industry and any other industry within agriculture is actually quite valuable economically, but also for the community as well. We're playing our part within the environment, GDP and everything like that. It just teaches people unknowingly, I think, subtly.
Yes, exactly. Subtly, that they can, what we are actually achieving in agriculture, and it's interesting with our Hey Inc program. I get a lot of parents that'll ring up and say, their child's really keen on agriculture. I don't know why, and is it a good career to go into? Because there's drought, especially when the droughts was really bad in 2019. Is there going to be any jobs and stuff? And I said, well, we still need to eat and still need to wear clothes, so there's definitely going to be jobs. So that whole perception of the industry, as you said, it changes sort of slowly or quite quickly sometimes too.
Yeah, there's a lot of like things to change around the language of what's used. Even like at school, if you were a kid and you were doing agriculture, it was like you just go out there to waste your time, waste your class or whatever. But now I think like that perception is changing to do with
Yep.
tech and everything. Like the kids that are keen in tech 10, 15 years ago didn't have any opportunity to join agriculture using technology as well. But like on farm, I don't know how many points of tech that we use currently. It's enormous currently.
Yes, and I think as an industry and through education and the Department of Education and things, we are getting that message through and showing those careers too. But yes, it's not just you're just a farmer on a farm, just a farmer. That sentence that we don't like. It's there is so many different things you're doing that makes it so exciting, and the tech that you can implement into your farm as well and through agriculture is great.
Yeah, it's only forever growing, whatever sort of things we can bring on farm for out there and in the future. But this week, you've been down in Sydney, you've been advocating for red meat and everything that we do from the paddock to the office. How was that, and what was it like to be down there talking to more so the metro, the shoppers, consumers?
Well, it was so great. It was doing the Red Meat Ambassador program was fantastic because it really gave me some learnings on how to engage with people, engage with the general public who may have a negative perception and negative ideas, and how to get on that same emotional level. It was really interesting at the show. I felt it was I came away with it as a feeling of I feel honoured that I can produce the beef and the lamb that these people are serving to their families every day. And there was discussions right through from it's expensive beef. We struggle to feed the family with the cost of it, and had discussions around that too. They're vegans that may have their opinions on things as well, which is understanding. But it was great to see the families there too that were trying to teach their children too about where their meat came from, and some watched the video and probably perhaps found it a little confronting, but their parents were fairly adamant that they wanted their young children to know about beef and lamb and things, and which was really great to see too. And it was really good to see a lot of school teachers coming up asking for some educational resources too, which MLA have to pass on, which was really interesting too. So yeah, as a producer and living in a rural community, it's sort of talking to like-minded people. But when you actually go to the show and you see city people, it's really an honor to think that we're producing the best quality meat that we can to support these people. And here on my own farm, I get to eat my own meat, and I don't have to worry about where, because I know exactly where it comes from. So I think it's a great opportunity to be able to actually go and talk to these people.
Yeah, absolutely, and probably gives you a bit of feedback as well from the consumer side of it, not directly about your beef that you produce, but about holistically what's going on in the red meat. Was there any questions that brought you unstuck, and did you bring that training into place?
Um, yes, there was the one about the expense of the meat. And then when I sort of discussed with her some of the, the inputs pressures that as a producer that we're having at the same time. And obviously the whole economy at the moment is tough too. And then I think the training was really good because we got onto the same level then, and we had a really good long discussion about cooking and different cuts of meats, and what other options there are, and things like that. So taking it down to sort of a mum who has to cook for their kids, and sharing the health benefits of the beef too, and lamb, which was something that they probably hadn't taken on. So yeah, the learning I got from that red meat ambassador training was fantastic, and I may not have had the confidence to do the trade show if I hadn't done that. So I've really appreciated that, and it's been really inspiring for me to put out there a bit more about what's happening on our farm. So I have set up a couple of social accounts for that.
I see, and I'll drop them in the show notes too, so everyone else can follow along. But what I'm keen to know is, did you transition any vegans to the green side?
I don't know. I don't think so. There was one, I don't know. Everyone has their opinion, and there's reasoning for that, but maybe they just had a little bit more education about it. But there was interesting. There was a family there, and the father was obviously rather vegan and wanting, to tell this little boy the scary sides about, what happens to the lambs when they go. They get, and he was really keen on agriculture, this little boy, and so I sort of twisted the conversation with him and started chatting to him about him and what he wants to do, and he'd love to be on a farm and work on a farm, and yeah, and then there was another lady there with him discussing, options of what he could do when he gets older, and go to a school that might offer agriculture. And it was really nice to see, a young city boy who's really keen to be in ag, but probably doesn't know the pathway, and to point them in the right directions for that too. So getting those young people engaged early, I think, is a really, really good thing to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you must have navigated that one quite well, and you're working with that movable middle.
Yes, yes. Hope so.
Putting it into practice. But for yourself, why is it so important for us as farmers, red meat producers, to advocate for our industry sectors and for the growth of our families, but also the future generations?
Well, I think it's so important for us to get the message out there to the broader general public. I mean, perceptions can sway government decisions, and we really saw that with what happened in the live export ban. And I was involved in the Isolated Children's Parents Association at that time, and at a conference up in Darwin, and the impact that had on families and industry up there was just immense. And my passion now is to, we need to let people know where their food comes from, how it's produced, and we need to be totally transparent, and we need them to get that understanding, so that decisions aren't made that are going to affect industry and affect growing of food and fibre that are detrimental because of lack of understanding and lack of knowledge of what actually goes on.
Absolutely. I think those little bits always go back to saying subtly. They may not remember it in the first instance, but they're just I have so many other things not about farming directly, but that I remember from years back, because that person took the time to actually tell me and educate me about a certain thing, like from my London days to whatever. It's just those sort of things in building up that rapport for the industry, but also for us as producers.
Yeah, exactly. I did use the training I got on the two Ubers I had as to when I was in Sydney. So had a little yarn to them, and discussed the show to them too. Actually, I think they didn't have much of an understanding of what opportunities were there and to see animals and things like that too. So I think places like the Sydney Royal Easter Show are a great, as you said, subtly way of educating as well. The crowds that go through there, and the opportunity then to get up close and personal with livestock is fantastic.
Absolutely, yeah. Uber's quite good for being the guinea pig to start the conversation. Other than how long you've been driving for Uber, mate. But it's all very important. I think, I was unsure of what was going on with the red meat program, but I think to advocate for what we do, whether you want to break that down to your food group, animal group, livestock group, sheep, cattle, goats, pig sort of stuff. Not all red meat there. But yeah, I'm really keen to sort of build that up as well for the audience. It's interesting though, because this podcast is just worrying about the internals, and with that, I hope that the externals look a lot better. So working that alongside what Red Meat Ambassador Program is doing, I think that will go a long way in helping the industry out.
Yes, absolutely, and helping us as industry, farmers to gets at those social skills as well to engage and the confidence to do it too, because it can be pretty daunting, knowing, am I putting the right thing up on my socials? Is this to be, and what happens if it's not, and how to deal with that. So that has been given me the confidence to be a bit more out there with my own personal socials.
Absolutely. And Sandra, to round off this episode, if you could ask the next guest a question on the podcast, what would it be without knowing who that next guest is?
I had to think about this one. Lucky you gave that to me beforehand. I don't. I guess I would say, what would be their long-term goal? They're on their farm, or in their business. What's their long-term goal? What are they trying to achieve? That's what a question I would like to ask them.
That's a good one. So I'll have to listen in and see what they say. But for anyone listening at home, for a piece of farms advice that you'd like someone to take away from this episode, what would that be? Is it about training, red meat program? What would that be?
Advice, I think it would be to share your story, to be transparent, to get it out there, to engage with people. We really don't, as an industry, have anything to hide, but educating it in a intelligent and an understanding way. Everyone has their different opinions, and we need to be respectful of that. But I think sharing what you do, because it's great what we do on farms, and it's so positive, and showing that whole paddock to plate experience is so important. So I think if other people are out there and wondering shouldn't they, get it out there. Get it out there on the socials, talk to people any way you can. I think we need to engage, with our schools as well, getting involved with them. I think teachers are, and that young generation is going to be, where we need to target as well. And I think that's happening now really well.
Absolutely. Great piece of advice there. For anyone following along, how can they contact you, Sandra, or follow you on social media? What's your handle?
Okay, so there's a couple of things there. They can contact if they're interested in the Hay Inc. Rural Education Program, which we hope young people are. So we're really we take expressions of interest all year round, and applications opened in usually about October for the following year, starting in February. So we had enrolments done by December. So that's hayinc.com.au, and there's Hay Inc. on Instagram, Facebook and Twitter. I have a personal Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter, and that's Sandra Iro. And also now, after doing the Red Meat MLA Ambassador Program, I have started Livestock Life, which is Facebook and Instagram. Livestock Life 1 on Instagram and Livestock Life on Facebook. So we're only at the starting stage, and I'm hoping my adult children will engage a bit more too when they're home, and they can send some stuff. They're good at critiquing my posts, which is good, and editing. But I have a drone now too, and taking a few cool photos with that, and they seem to be well received online as well. So that's my socials.
Okay, well, Sandra, thank you so much for coming on to the Farms Advice podcast. Great to get another advocate on here.
Thanks, Jack. And it's I think what you're doing on your podcast is great, and sharing what's happening on lots of farms all over Australia, which is really good.
Absolutely, one episode at a time.
Yes, well done. Yep.
This Farms Advice episode does not stop here. Come and join the conversation on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or TikTok, and even join our Facebook group. Go to farmsadvice.com.au for more on this episode, and spread the hashtag FarmsAdvice to your mates. If you can leave a review on Apple or Spotify, that will let other farmers find us too. But until then, see you next Tuesday.